10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
And welcome to Space Oddities, and indeed welcome to Rockets Away. This is a program where we talk about spaceflight and space exploration, and we also talk about different space agencies around the world. Today we will be profiling the Argentinian Space Agency, but more of that later. Joining me today is Michael. How are you, Michael?
Hi there. Well, very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. And looking like he's trying to attract a polar bear. Sitting there, we've got Daz. Are you warm enough, Daz?
Hey, it's my ghillie suit, so I can hide in the snow.
Ghillie or girly?
Ghillie suit. I can hide in the snow and I can go poaching.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Well, I hope you catch a few.
It's lovely and warm. I don't care what I look like.
Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining me today to record another edition of Rockets Away. And we're going to start this week by looking at some things that have been in the news this week. Now, you may remember that a couple of weeks ago, SpaceX launched the Starship on its second attempt to get into orbit. And now we've got some news possibly about the next attempt to get into orbit, which is known as OFT-3, or Orbital Flight Test 3. Elon Musk said this week that he thinks it will be in December. Now, we have to remember we're dealing with Elon Musk time here and not our reality time. But what do you guys think? Do you think it will be in December or not?
It's very, very unlikely. There's still, I think, as I said, when we were talking about this the other day on our weekly show, the license that was issued, which had lots of caveats and things like that in it, because if you remember, it was delayed due to an environmental inspection that was being held by the Wildlife and Fisheries Organization. I did call them funds the other day. I don't know why, but anyway. That's all completed. There looks as though there was no environmental catastrophe this time, unlike on the first attempt, but the license is designed in the small print that it can be adjusted where they won't have to go through all the formality of requesting one again, and they think that's what's going to happen, but they still got to hold an investigation into, or basically Starship, SpaceX have got to hold an investigation into why both vehicles failed. So that there will be a basic investigation, and they'll have to report back to the FAA, who will then have a look at what they've said, and then they will make a decision. I don't know if you saw I think it was from an official SpaceX site, but they did have a tracking telescope onto the actual rocket itself from the ground. I'm assuming it was SpaceX.
No, it was actually an amateur astronomer who took that.
Oh, was it? Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, because he had an also. But one question I've got to ask is, why did the Starship go out of control like it did, and why did it continue for so long? Because we didn't see none of that.
No,
didn't they talk something about the sloshing of the fuel?
They reckon that was in the booster section.
Right.
There's an even more worrying question. That footage distinctly showed the Starship in two pieces after the flight termination system had kicked in. So it looks as though it actually failed to destroy the Starship altogether. Again. So we need to look at that as well. What do you think, Michael? December or not?
I don't think so. I think it's too early. I think it'll be January or first quarter. some time.
They've got a lot to do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no point in flying it just for the sake of flying it, because they need to understand what the issues were and fix them, and that is not going to happen before the end of December.
The other thing I think is weather, because it's getting towards the cold season as well. Is there any like restrictions in weather, like there was with the shuttle, for instance?
I don't think it's got O-rings.
No, I don't think.
Not like that. Is it anything else that might affect it, sort of thing?
Well, the thing is, it's covered in ice when it takes off anyway.
That's true. That's true.
Because it's liquid methane and liquid oxygen. Which is one of the first things you see fall off, which is always spectacular.
Well, I was going to say that there's more to this than actually meets the eye. Elon Musk would really love to launch it in December because of this.
Yes, of course.
Because the ULA Vulcan Centaur is due to make its maiden flight on Christmas Eve. That's the latest date.
Yeah.
And I've got a feeling that Elon Musk wants to outdo ULA by getting the Starship into orbit before ULA get the Vulcan into orbit.
Nice.
So there's a bit of brinkmanship going on here, I feel. So there we are. Anyway, we will see. Personally, I think SpaceX have got to understand the problem and design solutions, and then build the solutions.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned ULA. Of course, we now know that Blue Origin's with a consortium.
Well, if you look for the next slide.
Oh, sorry. Okay, mate. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. ULA are up for sale, and the company that looks most likely to buy it is, of course, Blue Origin.
Yeah.
And do either of you know how much ULA is valued at?
I did see, but I'm not going to hazard a guess because I can't.
No, not really.
No. Well, it's probably not as much as you think. Current estimates put the value of ULA at between 1 and 7 billion.
Oh, right.
Which doesn't sound a lot, to be honest. But anyway, Blue Origin have become the leader, or the leading contender, apparently, to buy ULA. And we were saying earlier, weren't we, that if they do that, there's very little point of them proceeding with the development of their New Glenn launcher, because they'll have the Vulcan Centaur.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So,
and of course, they provide the engines for the Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, I don't really know, what's what they would do. Knowing Jeff Bezos, though, anything's possible, really, isn't it? So,
yeah. But it's like we said, it was really the only way that Blue Origins can get anything into space. I mean, all the years that they've existed, Blue Shepard, we still haven't, other than some mock-up sections, we still haven't seen anything go ahead.
Of New Glenn.
Of New Glenn, sorry, what did I say? New Shepard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the flying, yes. And summer thing. But one thing, just sort, if I can, I'm just going back to SpaceX and the Starship. And it's been announced this week, and we were talking about it just off air, that they are going for a new variation of the Starship.
Yes.
Now, apparently, it's going to be bigger, lighter. It's going to carry more fuel. And how they're going to do this, they're sort of like speculation. Unfortunately, SpaceX, and we were saying it's an unfortunate acronym they're using for it, and that's V1 and V2. Well, of course, for in Britain, that means something different to us. But yeah, it's going to be a completely different design, and it was something to do with when they're refueling to get the more fuel up into up to the Starship. Going to be
bigger fuel tanks, basically.
Yeah, bigger fuel tanks. But they were talking about the possibility of using thinner metal, which they talked about before. But one of the problems they had when they were testing the Starship in their flights with the belly flop maneuver was that sometimes when it landed, if it had a hard landing, it'd all crumple up. You could see it on a couple of the landings where they used thin material rather than the thicker material. You can see it actually sort of like the nose cone actually crumples just above where the fins are.
Yeah, yeah.
You can see it crumble. So yeah, it's a watch this space scenario. He's got new engines developed. The Raptor engines are being redeveloped as well. So watch this space. So sorry, I just wanted to put that back into
No problem. I mean, the SpaceX have said since about 2018 that they are going to build a much bigger version of the Starship, and this would appear to be it. I assume that they're not then going to be making any new Starships with the current version. Maybe, I don't know, because they've got how many have they got? They've got
4, I think it is at the moment.
4 at the moment, yeah. So they've got enough for another few test flights.
Yeah.
So anyway, as you said, watch this space. We will keep you informed, viewers, as to what's happening.
If you want to see about it, I think it was on YouTube and it came under a thing called Great SpaceX.
Yeah,
they put an explainer right there. It's about 20 minutes long, so
yeah.
So yeah.
All right, thank you for that, guys. Now let's move on. We are planning to profile each of the world's international space agencies or companies as we go through these editions of Rockets Away. And it may surprise you to know that there are actually 76 space agencies worldwide. You only really get to hear
as we started this.
yeah, absolutely. You only ever really get to hear about NASA, the ESA, and Roscosmos, but dotted around the world, there are many, many other space agencies. So we thought it would be a nice idea to profile what they do, so that you're aware of what's going on in the whole of spaceflight, not just between Europe, Russia, and America. And to that end, we're doing it alphabetically. So today we've reached the dizzy heights of Argentina, have we not?
Argentina, yeah.
Yes. So
as I said, I think I'm going to have to review the list because there's bound to have been more come along since we've, because you see more and more signing either the Artemis articles or the Chinese version.
Didn't we have a new signatory to Artemis recently?
Yeah, and I think that could have been. There's been about 4 over but the last few months.
Right.
But also you're seeing people sign up to the Chinese
and it's not just the space agencies, the number of private companies that are now springing up everywhere.
Exactly.
Is impossible to keep up with. I keep seeing names of space companies in the news that I've never heard of. So it's all accelerating. Anyway, Daz, pray tell us about the Argentinian Space Agency.
Right, let's get rid of our ugly mugs.
Right,
the Argentinian Space Agency. Now, this agency has been around for a very, very long time, and it was one of the first agencies to set up a planetary society many, many moons ago. But they have been very, very busy. It was really surprising when I looked into this. But so what I'm going to do, there's a lot of information in here, but we're going to scan through it as we go, and basically we'll have a chat about certain things that they're doing. But if anybody wants to read the actual slides as I go through, the best thing to do is watch this again and freeze so you can actually watch the see the actual the right number. But there is a lot here. Really is a lot here. They're very busy, and they have been and always and probably will be into the future. So next one. So let's go to the next slide. So the Argentina Space Agency, they're called CONAE. That's CONAE. I'm not going to pronounce what that is in Spanish. So here we go. As we know, Argentina is in South America, and it's a population of 45 million people. It's a member of the United Nations and the Organization of American States and the G20. And it has a long history in scientific and technical achievement dating back to the 19th century.
Daz, can I just tell you exactly what CONAE stands for?
Go on then, please.
It's the Comisión Nacional de Actividades Espaciales.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought, but I didn't.
Yeah, the National Commission on Space Activities, basically.
Right.
Wow.
Thank you. Well, it just says what it does on the tin, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, then here we go. So the Sociad. I wish I could stop moving my cursor because it takes everything. Argentina Interplanetary, as you said. During the 1940s, Teofilio Tambinara, he organized a group of foreign and Argentina specialists as the Sociedad Argentina Interplanetaria, or the SAI, which says there, the Argentine Interplanetary Society. So these were the forerunners of CONE. Taberna's efforts ensured that Argentina was the first Latin American nation to create a spaceflight organization in 1952, and was one of the founding members of the International Astronautical Federation. Stop moving your cursor. So I'm just waiting for something. Argentine Aldo Cocoa was a pioneer in space law and helped originate the idea of space being the common heritage of humankind, later enshrined in United Nations treaty in the 1960s. And of course, that's the space,
the Outer Space Treaty.
Yeah, and that's the one that's still used to today, although it's been very rarely tested. And really, it needs to be. I mean, there's been several treaties that have formed afterwards, including the Artemis articles, and of course, the whole thing needs updating, and people need to sign up to these articles just to basically to keep space safe and peaceful. So, right, the Commission Nacional Investigaciones Especiales. That was a good one, Andy.
Not bad at all, mate. Not bad at all.
It was formed in 1960, named head of a newly created commission. We won't go there. The National Commission for Space Research, a forerunner of the agency founded in 1960. I think I've got the wrong date there on the top of that one. CNIE worked with Argentina's air forces to develop a number of indigenous multi-stage high-altitude sounding rockets and missiles. Now, sounding rockets are rockets that take instruments up to the edge of space where basically experiments can be done, and also things like infrared and X-ray photography can actually happen. Argentina was the first country in Latin America to send an object into space using an indigenous developed rocket. So they built their own rocket to send it in. During the 70s, they used the American two-stage solid propellant Castor rocket, which took it up to altitudes of 500 kilometers. And it carried international experiments, as I said, for several countries. Also, in the 1970s, they signed an agreement with France to take these high altitude balloons up to the edge of space, which again carried several instruments on them. They launched 500 stratospheric air balloons into the Earth's stratosphere to study the dynamics of air displacement. The small upper pressure balloons, which could be interrogated by a satellite during flight, were launched from Mendoza Air Park. And some of these balloons were aloft for over a year, so they were up there for quite some time. So nobody shot them down like the Chinese one, but that was a naughty one. So the Commission of National Space and Research. Its mission is to promote and develop the space and science and technology in Argentina. CONE is responsible for designing, developing and launching satellites, conducting space research and providing space-based services. So basically they're, you know, like any other sort of like space organization. So Uh, their their early years have focused on building human capital and developing necessary infrastructure. Um, they launched their own satellites. Their first satellite was the SAC-B satellite. Conne launched its first Earth observation satellite, the SAC-C, in 2006. It launched a number of other satellites, and you can see a list of them there. Conne is currently working on a number of new projects, including the development of a new satellite constellation. And it seems to be the ambition of most of these space organizations to produce their own satellite constellation. And again, this is where treaties have got to come in and start to restrict these constellations. But they're also busy building a spaceport. Past missions. We'll quickly go through this. Now, this is an interesting one. They first launched using the Pegasus rocket, which is an American design rocket. And as you can see, it's like the Virgin Galactic rockets. They were dropped from an aircraft, and then the rocket would fly up into space and deliver its payload. Now, some of these were actually flown from the Canary Islands, so they actually flew from Spanish territories. So what do we say here? It says the first Argentine scientific satellite, whose main goal was to study the solar physics and astrophysics. Launching problems prevented it from deploying in orbit, as it was still attached to the rocket. It could not extend its solar panels and was only operated while the batteries lasted. So it was unfortunate that it was unsuccessful. So this is their SAC-B. Now, some of these were launched from the space shuttle. Their SAC-C was launched November 2000. Still operational, and it forms part of a constellation together with NASA's Landsat, Terra, and EO1, and carries multispectral mid-resolution sensors. If you want to learn a bit more about it, then you had SAC-D Aquarius, was launched in 2011 as part of a cooperation between Conne and NASA. And then you got SAC-1A, which was launched on the 8th of October on a Falcon 9 with SpaceX. It's an Earth observation satellite. Right. They are building their own vehicle. This is it. It's the Tronador 2 rocket. It's going to be a multi-stage rocket. You can see some of the information there on the right-hand side. It says the last of the attempts to launches ended with the rocket falling into the side of the launcher structure without any fire explosion, due to the rocket being loaded with only 460 kilograms of fuel for a short combustion in order to test the engine. No material or human life was resulting, so they're still developing this. Right. So this is their test site. It's not their actual launch site. They haven't built their launch site yet. And this is the VEX 1A. It's on the launch pad at Punto Indio Spaceport. It's a test site, as I said. It's intended to test the VEX rocket's technical demonstrators for the Trondor 2 launcher. The Trondor launch site, that's just saying where it's at. It's going to be actually, when they build it, it's going to actually be built at the Port Belgrano naval base. So that's well in hand. They've also got a space center, which is in southwest Cordoba, in a region called Falda de Carmen, and it houses the following institutions. I'm not going to read all of these out, but it's reasonable. It's got a tracking station, which is responsible for tracking satellites and for the ingestion and cataloging of archiving satellite data. It's been operational since 1997 and has a capacity for data reception and TT&C, what that means. Currently, it receives data from 12 international satellites besides the data from Argentinian missions. They're looking at setting up a second station in another part of the country, and as you can see it there. It's the southern tip of Argentina where they'll be building a new one, and that will be collecting data on the Antarctic continent.
Right.
There's a mission operations center which is controlling the satellites and the missions. There's a testing and integration facilities, which is self-explanatory. There's also the Institution of Advanced Space Studies, Mario Gulch, for the promotion of advanced knowledge and innovative use of space information. It has been named in honor of the former CONE physicist Mario Gulch, who conceived the first Argentine satellite for scientific applications, the SAC-B. Mr. Gulch died in 1994. Here's some more of the. They're looking to launch more satellites. There's the Sabia SAC-E, which is satellite observation, information and recollection of water and food. That's to be launched in 2024. There's the SAC-F, which has got an unknown date. They're also working with now is this the point? It's the SATCOM-SAR antenna, and I do believe this is being developed with the Belgium space agencies and Italians partnership. It's a series. The SATCOM series involves the construction of 2 missions with L-band full polarimetric synthetic aperture radar SAR. So there's and then they've got SARE satellites are under study. They will weigh about 200 kilograms and deploy nanotechnology.
Sorry, can you just go back a slide?
Go back a slide. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The SAOCOM, I'm pretty sure that's Earth observation. Because synthetic aperture radar is often used to measure sea levels.
Oh, okay, that's great, Andy. Thanks for that. Thanks for filling that.
Yeah.
Okay then. So we okay to carry on? Yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
The conclusion: CONE is an ambitious organisation. Has made significant progress in its early years and well positioned to play a leading role in the global space industry. And CONE's future aims are ambitious. They are, but they are achievable with the continued support of the Argentine government and people, of course.
Fantastic.
So that's the Argentinian.
There we are. That's the Argentinian Space Agency. Very interesting, guys.
And I think the next one is Australia.
So next time we will be profiling the Australian Space Agency.
Yeah, run by kangaroos.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Nothing like stereotyping, is there?
Kangaroos, wallabies.
But of course, Australia has a long history in spaceflight.
Of course, yes.
Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about the history?
Well, of course, you had the British involvement in Australia with the British rockets that were not launched from
Woomera. Yeah,
Woomera. I pronounce that right. Things like the Black Arrow and the launch of the Prospero satellite, which was actually the Prospero satellite was actually launched after the rocket program was cancelled by the UK government. And I do believe that Prospero is still in orbit.
It is indeed.
Yes.
It's not working, but it's still in orbit.
It's still in orbit, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe it's an early communication satellite, is that right?
Yes, it was. It was Britain's first and only communication satellite.
Yeah.
Although, having said that, of course, the American Telstar was largely British built.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. But
of course, they destroyed that with the nuclear tests.
That's right.
Right.
They launched the day after because they launched Now, was it Ariel 1? Again, a British-built satellite for the Americans. They launched that on the day of the... no, let me get... No, I think they launched it the day after the nuclear test, which is called Starfish, in the Pacific. And, of course, it left... And nobody knew about these things at the time. They were letting off these bombs and things like that, and they just didn't know what effect they were having on the atmosphere. And, unfortunately, Ariel 1 flew through the... radiation belt, or whatever you want to call it, or cloud, and completely messed it up. It did continue to work occasionally, but most of it was garbled. And then the day after, they launched Telstar, and again that flew through the radiation cloud, and that the degradation caused by that made it failed earlier than it should have done. But of course, that gave us our first transatlantic television picture.
Television, yes, exactly. Yeah.
With the pictures going into Goonhilly Downs in Cornwall.
I was just about to say that.
It's a place I visited many times.
It's one of the things that got me interested in space was Telstar, because I can remember after it just launched, and of course there wasn't that many satellites in the sky then, not like that, you know, every photograph you take of the sky has got, you know, 10, 15 satellites moving somewhere along the sky. But I was actually in the New Forest, and as a young child, knee high to a grasshopper, and my mother pointed out Telstar as it went over.
I was much the same, except mine was Echo 2. It may have been Echo 1. I'm not sure about the dates. It was a long time ago. But Echo 2, definitely, that my father showed me in the back garden. And it was very low in the sky, so he had to put me on his shoulders to look over the neighbour's fence so I could see it low in the sky.
Yeah.
And I was only about, I don't think I was even 2 at the time, but I remember it very clearly.
All right.
And that got me hooked instantly. And then when I went to primary school, we had a couple of mornings a week when we could choose what we wanted to do. There's a novel approach for schools. Yeah, and I always chose reading and going to the school library, and I got a book out of the school library called Moon, Sun and Stars, and that was it. I was absolutely hooked. Yeah. And there you are. Right. Well, thank you, Daz, for that. We shall look forward to hearing. Oh, what I was also going to say about Australia, of course, Australia's involvement in astronomy is enormous.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Because they've got the Murchison radio array in a radio quiet zone in Western Australia. And, of course, it's that site where they're building the Australian component of the Square Kilometre Array.
Yes.
The world's biggest ever radio telescope.
Yeah, and, of course, historically, you've got Siding Spring Observatory as well.
Siding Spring, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not forgetting the pictures from Apollo 11 coming into Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that film.
If you haven't seen the film The Dish, it's well worth seeing.
Definitely.
It's the story of how Australia inadvertently became the only place on the Earth that could receive the pictures from Apollo 11.
Yeah.
So you're going to say something?
Going back to Ariel as well, the name Ariel has come back in a new satellite being built with a lot of British involvement of it, I believe, as an exoplanet observatory.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And anyway, so the Parkes radio telescope in Australia was the only place that could receive the images from the moon. And the video from the moon, and the film The Dish is a recounting of that. It's a really funny film, and it's quirky and it's funny, and well worth seeing if you get the chance. There we are. Right, guys. Well, anything else you want to say today before we wrap up? I suppose we should have a look at the launch schedule that's coming up.
Yeah. If we have a look at the launch schedule, and then I'd just like to say a little bit about space stations.
Oh, go on then.
No. If we do your schedule first.
Well, I was just about to say there's not a lot that's actually concretely planned at the moment. We've got a Falcon 9 Starlink mission coming up tomorrow.
Right.
in the middle of the night, European time. Rocket Lab are also on Tuesday launching their next Electron. The mission is codenamed The Moon God Awakens for some reason. They're launching a Japanese satellite. Of course, don't forget, this is the first flight of the Electron since they had a launch failure in September. Then on the day after, we've got Falcon, SpaceX Falcon 9. This is on Wednesday, lifting a military satellite for South Korea. That's flying out of Vandenberg. On December the 1st, we've got a Soyuz Progress resupply mission to the International Space Station. And then later on in December, we've got the SpaceX Falcon Heavy, lifting the rather secretive but not really US Space Force space plane into orbit for another flight. And we've got another Falcon 9 lifting a Swedish broadband satellite. But as we said earlier, on December the 24th, that's the projected date of the maiden flight of the ULA Vulcan Centaur. And that is launching the Peregrine lunar lander towards the moon, obviously. And that Peregrine lander is going to carry multiple experiments. And although it never mentions it in the blurb, we believe that it will include the first British lunar rover on board, about which not much has been heard recently, so we don't actually know if that's going ahead. But theoretically, Britain is launching a lunar lander to the moon on Christmas Eve. So, and it's not like any lunar rover. It doesn't even have wheels. It will articulate itself around the lunar surface using jointed legs. So this lunar rover is a bit of a misnomer. It's a lunar explorer that will actually walk across the moon's surface. And that's a British invention by a British company. Yeah. So we'll look forward to that. Other than that, there are no firm dates for anything after that, except January the 10th, Axiom 3 being launched by Falcon 9. And that's going to another flight which will last 2 weeks to the International Space Station. Don't forget that Axiom are going to build their own space station modules to attach to the space station. And when they've built enough of them, they will detach and form their own complete space station. So the ISS will have a baby, if you like. And the next mission program is scheduled for January the 10th. We've got on January the 12th another moon mission, the IM-1 mission, and that's going to deliver a suite of science payloads to the surface of the moon under NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. So, and that's about it. So there you are. Sorry, Daz, what were you going to say?
I've forgotten though. Oh, you're talking about our little rover that they're sending up there. Yeah, as you said, it's going to be walking around on jointed legs. This is just sort of like this. I think they're just sending the one rover this time, but in future, it's going to be. It'll have its own. How can I say nesting? It'll have a command sort of like machine, which basically the walkers will go out, and the idea of them being on legs is that they will be able to manage slopes far better, but also they will be able to get down into lava tubes and things like that.
Yeah.
But what they will do is they'll have a mother base, which will basically sit there. It will deliver them to the moon. It will pop all these little walkers off. They'll go. They'll do all their little bits and bobs, do their recordings, come back in the evening. They will then go back onto the mother base. They will be recharged while they're actually there before they're set off again. So it's going to be sort of like a swarm type thing once it gets going.
That's fantastic.
So you'll have sort of like 6 or 7 of these little things running off every day, doing their stuff, then coming back home, downloading. And things like that. That's the idea. That's the thing behind it. But then going to sorry, Michael, you want to say something?
I was just going to say it's going to be an interesting mission there. So good luck to everybody involved.
So this is a fingers crossed that the Vulcan works because this is its confirmation flight where it'll get its
I'm always worried about companies putting valuable payloads on maiden missions. You know,
Yeah.
Especially
because even
Peregrine.
NASA are doing it now with New Glenn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they've got 2 satellites booked to go on there.
Yeah.
But this is what, especially with Peregrine, this has been delayed quite a lot again.
A long time.
For its launch system. But it's not just, it's carrying lots of payloads.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's even got some. One of them is a funeral directors are flying people's ashes to the moon and things like that. You got things, but there's whole sets. There's going to be loads of different rovers which will drop off. There'll be other sort of like instruments attached to it, which will be doing other sort of experiments and things like that. And it's been, you know, talked about for a very long time, and to put it on an untested rocket is, like you say, bit of a chance. And as you said, NASA have already booked space on the first flight of the
New Glenn.
Again, is, you know, but they said that it'll be acceptable if they do lose them, but that's not acceptable.
That's
If you
not,
know what I mean.
No.
It's just, you know, it's but yeah, like I said, but we'll have to keep. It's a watch this space.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date with what's going on. But
Yeah,
you know, I really
as
would
regards
question the wisdom of putting valuable payloads on maiden flights of new rockets.
Oh,
yeah.
But there we are.
With space stations, of course, about sort of like, I don't know, about the last 8-9 months, we had a plethora of new space stations being planned by multiple companies and multiple organizations. Even the ESA are talking about putting one up there, but now that's dwindling again. Because Blue Origins have pulled out of Orbital Reef, and as a result, it seems that Sierra Space have sort of like pulled out as well. Of course, Axiom would have had their space station already being built from the end of last year, but they're going to be using inflatable sections. But the company that was designing these nanoracks at the time, unfortunately, they went bust, so that was all put on hold. So they've had to develop their own, and they have tested these things to destruction.
Many times,
and they've overpressurized them, and apparently they actually absorb micrometeor impacts better than steel does.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And but like I said, they've put these things into a pressure container, and they've overpressurized them, and they can take so much pressure, and when they go, they do go. I virtually blew the chamber apart. Because it took so much to actually destroy it. But this should have been already ongoing. But now at the Axiom is now NASA's chosen where it was Orbital Reef. It's NASA's now going with Axiom, which they should have done right from the word go.
I mean, but I think it just underlines, doesn't it, that the exploration of space, nothing ever goes how it should when it should. It's always a long trial and error process.
That's right.
You know, and we can't expect things to happen overnight, even though some of us have been waiting 50 years for the next moon landings. But that just goes to show, you know, a few bad mistakes made after Apollo, NASA concentrating solely on the space shuttle, which never lived up to expectations, never did what it should have done. But this is what happens. Anyway, I digress. All right, then. Well, I think
Northrop Grumman were going to build a space station. They've pulled out as well.
Yes.
Now they've linked up with, is it Venture?
Ventura, is it?
Or is it Vast?
It's a European company anyway.
Oh, right.
Going with them. So so where we were looking at having lots of space stations, that is now dwindled on. I wouldn't be surprised if a few more pull out of their own.
They're all swapping partners so much. I'm surprised they don't put their car keys in the middle of the table, to be quite honest.
That's right. Yeah.
Who was the company that we're going to have sort of like partial artificial gravity? They were going to have a rotating.
That was yes.
Oh well, they were there.
Voyager Station.
The Voyager Station. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's who Voyager. It might be who Northrop Grumman teamed up with.
I think you're right. I think it was Voyager. Yeah.
Sierra Space were involved with them as well.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, stay with us. We'll try and explain it as we go forward. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been great to have you watching this video. If you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Space Odysseys channel. Turn the notifications on so that you're always kept aware of any new things that we do. And we will be back very soon with more discussion about the current state of rocketry and spaceflight. And of course, as we said, a profile of the Australian Space Agency. So we got that to look forward to. So from myself and Michael and Mr. Polar Bear himself, Daz, we wish you a very good afternoon.
Yeah, next time we'll be throwing a shrimp on the Barbie.
Absolutely. So take care, look after each other. We hope to see you as a viewer on our Tuesday live streams on Space Odysseys. And we've got some lovely special guests coming up very soon. So we hope to see you there. But if not, until next time, from rockets away from all of us, take care and goodbye.
Keep looking up.